On today's show, we're talking about when Jacob deGrom is going to make his spring training debut, Jack Leiter unveiling yet another new pitch, and why Sebastian Walcott reminds me of Patrick Mahomes. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering the team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about Jacob deGrom throwing his first live BP of the spring when he's going to finally pitch in a Cactus League game, and Jack Leiter adding yet another new pitch, why I think it really changes his future outlook. Before all that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Now, we finally know when Jacob deGrom is going to throw in a spring training game. I really hope there will be a StatCast. I extra super duper hope that there will be some kind of video, hopefully a televised TV broadcast, but I will take what I can get because Jacob deGrom threw a live bullpen on Saturday, no issues, looked like Jacob deGrom, except for the first 4 pitches that he threw were all balls, and a teammate jokingly said, "You should cut him," after the fun little walk there. But we are going to see Jacob deGrom on Friday, March the 7th, whatever the actual day is, this upcoming Friday. As you are listening to this, we will finally see Jacob deGrom in a game. He is healthy. Again, it has been repeated over and over and over and over and over. He is ready to go. This is normal for him in the spring. This is not something that is abnormal. This is not something of the Rangers being extra cautious with him. This is just kind of how his spring ramps up. You know, some pitchers, they need the full 6, 8, however many weeks there are in spring training to get their full workload ramp up type of shindig. That's most pitchers. But Jacob deGrom, for many reasons, is not most pitchers. I mean, this guy has only thrown, I believe, 2 spring training games before the calendar turned to March in his entire career. Not post 2021 when he started breaking down a little bit more, throwing 100 miles an hour and, spending more time on the injured list than on the mound. No, that was even when he was fully healthy, pitching 200 innings a season in his mid to late 20s. This has always been the kind of pitcher Jacob deGrom is. We don't really have that full track record of it as Rangers fans because we have gotten 9 starts, I believe, in the big leagues of Jacob deGrom. 3 this year, 6 in 2023. And who knows how many we'll get. Hopefully more than 9. And hopefully more than the, 70, 80 innings or so that we have seen of Jacob deGrom in a Texas Rangers uniform so far. I think we'll be getting a whole lot more than that. I am very excited to see him throw on Friday. Bruce Bochy did mention that, he's fully ready. He looks like himself, and he said he'll be ready to go in the first week. Now, first week, not opening day, but first week. I talked a little bit about it on Friday, where I thought there should be no question about Jacob deGrom being the Rangers' opening day starter, but apparently there is some question at opening week. Interesting little tidbit there. Interesting little phrasing there, Bruce Bochy. I see you don't say things of consequence very often, or you hide them and shroud them in mystery, but I'm on to you, Bruce. I see what you're doing there. The Rangers have not yet announced an opening day starter. I would assume it would be Jacob deGrom. It should be Jacob deGrom. He's the best pitcher on the earth, and if you're paying all that money for an opening day ticket, I feel like you should get to see Jacob deGrom. That should just be a thing. No offense to Nathan Eovaldi. Fine pitcher, great pitcher, World Series hero and champion. But if I'm paying all that money for an opening day ticket, I sure as heck would like to see me some Jacob deGrom on the mound. Now, speaking of pitchers on the mound who throw fastballs very hard, Jack Leiter threw his second game of the spring on Friday. In the first game, he debuted a new pitch, a sinker, which he had not thrown before. He throws a four-seam fastball, which plays better at the top of the zone, and he doesn't really command that particularly well. And he also threw a sinker, which he did not throw last year or the year before or really any year as a professional. And as far as my knowledge goes, he didn't throw it in college either. Maybe he messed around with it in high school or junior high or whatever, but this was a new pitch and it looked very good. The fastball was sitting up there, way up there in velocity, 97.4 miles an hour with the four-seam fastball, and the sinker averaged exactly the same. So the velocity is the same. It moves just a little bit different, not as much of a swing and miss pitch. Doesn't have those properties where it plays super well at the top of the zone, a pitch that plays a little bit better in the bottom of the zone, but the thing with Jack Leiter, the four-seam fastball shape and all of that is very good, but hitters can just sit on it because it's the only pitch that he trusts to throw for a strike. Now, if he adds that sinker, okay, that's another look. That's another something. That's another offering that hitters have to think about, especially if he can throw it for strikes. They can't just sit on the four-seam fastball and say, that's all that's coming. That's all that's going to be in the strike zone. Everything else is going to be a ball, or it's going to be a hanging breaking ball that I can crush. But no, that sinker adds just that little bit of look, and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking a little bit differently about Jack Leiter. He had been very much the same pitcher, making the same mistake for his first several years as a professional. Still, a lot of upside, still a lot of promise there. Still heading into the spring training. Even after last year, he made some progress. He made some steps forward. He looked a lot better in AAA. He was the PCL pitcher of the year. That is not nothing. That is a very good sign of how well Jack Leiter did in his time in AAA. Now, the time in the big leagues, it's a little harder to evaluate because, in some of those starts, his defense let him down. And in some of those starts, he let himself down. And some of those starts, his manager let him down, keeping him in the game just a little bit too long. And other starts, his bullpen even let him down, letting some of his inherited runners score all the way from first and inflating his ERA a bit more than I think it deserved. But still, wasn't a whole lot of success at the big league level. There were some flashes for sure, but still in the back of everyone's minds, at least in the back of my mind, and a lot of people that I talked to thought, okay, well, maybe Leiter isn't going to be a starter. Maybe he can't land that slider and that curveball in the zone for strikes, let alone quality strikes. He doesn't have command of the four-seamer. He's not throwing it where it needs to go, which is why it gets lit up, despite it having all those very good properties of velocity, of deception, of spin. It's just the location that is very, very hard, if not impossible, to train. And because all the hitters could just sit on that four-seamer, they were able to tee off on it at the rate they did. But then he has a thinker. You say, okay, all right, that's a little bit better of a pitch. Maybe he doesn't end up in the bullpen. And by end up in the bullpen, I mean eventually is a very, very nasty elite reliever, which is a good player and a hard thing to develop, something the Rangers haven't developed. Not ideal for the number 2 overall pick and all of the time and effort and hopes that the Rangers have invested in Jack Leiter, but still not a horrendous outcome. Not ideal, but not horrendous. And then he comes in his second outing, and he starts throwing a changeup, which he had thrown before. He had thrown changeup before, and they had not been anything that special. They'd been fine. Just fine. Not anything to write home about. It was a fourth pitch. It was a four-seamer, slider, curveball. All of those coming out of the draft thought, okay, those could be potentially double plus pitches. Probably just plus, but maybe double plus, depending on the evaluator you spoke to. They all had that kind of potential. And the changeup was, okay, you need something else to get to lefties. That's it. That was why you have a changeup. And it was fine. Maybe fringe average, maybe a little bit below average. It just was not that special. And then he comes out throwing this new type of changeup. Call it a kick changeup. He learned it from Matt Festa, which is his best pitch. It's a unique type of pitch, and Jack is a very, very smart pitcher, a very, what is the word I'm thinking of? He thinks a lot. He's a big brain pitcher. He tinkers a lot. He, thinks a lot about the science and the nerdy stuff of pitching. More so, has a much better understanding of it than probably you or I do. But he saw this changeup that Matt Festa was throwing, and the type of pitcher that Matt Festa is, the way that he, grips it with his fingers, the pronating versus supinating. Jack describes it better, and it's a little bit over my head, to be completely honest, but it works for him. And it looked really, really good. The changeup mainly drops down. It has a little bit of cut side action. It goes in away from righties and into lefties, but mostly just goes straight up and down. Now, a traditional circle changeup, which is what he was throwing, it goes away from lefties and down. and goes into righties, which is why you don't throw it against righties as much as a right-handed pitcher. Same with lefties and left-handed hitters. It just doesn't work as well against that. But he pops up this new changeup, and it starts getting a bunch of ugly swings and misses on it. I mean, 6 swings, 2 swings and misses, and they were not particularly close. I mean, they were way off of this changeup, and it's also a whole lot harder. It's a whole lot faster than what he threw last year. I mean, it averaged 92.3 miles an hour in the 10 times that he threw it in this game, and last year he was at 89.5 miles an hour, so up basically 3 miles an hour from where his changeup was last year. Granted, the four-seamer was also playing up a whole mile an hour. Slider was also playing up. The curveball was also playing up a mile an hour. I mean, his stuff is just ticking way up. So you add the velocity uptick. You add that new sinker. You add the new changeup. You're thinking, okay, maybe this is a new Jack Leiter. Maybe we're finally seeing Jack Leiter reinvent himself and, grow and learn and mature and, progress in the way that I'd been hoping for and kind of expecting the last couple years. Because, progression is not a linear path. Player development, especially pitcher development, it's not a linear path. Sometimes you go up, you go back, you go forward. It's not the same for everybody. It's not just, okay, make your debut, get better. Go to the next level, get better. Make your major league debut, get better and better and better. It's not always like that for everybody. And it took a lot of failure for Jack to start making these progressions, to start making these changes to, whatever sources of info he was listening to, whoever he was, taking his information from. Maybe he's changed those a little bit. Maybe he's relied a little bit more on himself, relied a little bit more on what the Rangers are teaching him versus, maybe listening to his dad or other coaches. Because he's had a lot of different people in his ear. Smart people well-meaning. Vanderbilt coaching staff was very good. His dad was a very good major league pitcher for a long time. But at a certain point, you can have too many cooks in the kitchen. And I think that Jack has, excommunicated some of those cooks, or maybe put them as sous chefs as opposed to full-on chefs in the kitchen. And these new developments, the velocity uptick, the sinker, the changeup, it's made me really think differently about what Jack Leiter could be, both now and way down the line. Coming up, we're talking a little bit about a couple of former top prospects and one actual current top prospect that reminds me of Patrick Mahomes. I'll tell you why right after this. This show's brought to you by FanDuel. When the games tip off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. They've got all kinds of odds right now for NBA, NHL. They've also got World Series odds. The Rangers odds somehow changed in the last couple of weeks. They've been up and down, and right now they are the 9th favorite to win the World Series, behind in the American League only the Yankees, the Orioles, the Astros, and the Boston Red Sox. They have jumped past the Cardinals, past the Cubs, past the Padres, and past the Mariners. All of them are right behind the Rangers at plus 3,000, as well as the Tigers and Twins. Man, a lot of teams at plus 3,000 to win the World Series. Right now, the Rangers have the tied for the 4th best odds to win the American League. Just in general, make the World Series right now. Yankees favored, then Orioles, then Astros, then Red Sox and Rangers tied at plus 900. So go check out all those odds right now. New FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official partner of the NBA. Shout out to the Aviators making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we'll be back talking about this Rangers offense, why I'm very confident that it will bounce back, and, whatever happens in today's game. No idea. Adrian Hauser's at the helm, and I don't think I'll talk too much about Adrian Hauser in tomorrow's show. But one thing I do want to talk about is this feature written over the weekend by Sean McFarland of the Dallas Morning News, writing about the Rangers' top prospect, Sebastian Walcott. Specifically, writing about him learning from a mentor, and that mentor being Marcus freaking Semien. And when I saw that headline, just the headline alone, I was like, oh boy, it's happening again. And I read it in the feature. It was an excellent feature. Go read it. Go subscribe to the Dallas Morning News. Sean is a great writer, a great feature writer. But just the fact that this is happening gave a lot of great insights about it, about Sebastian Walcott, sometimes even beating Marcus Semien to the weight room. You should be as excited as I am. I am literally jumping for joy because there is no greater mentor that a young player can learn from than Marcus Semien, especially one with all the raw talents and tools of Sebastian Walcott. Some of the hard skills, the athleticism, the speed, the raw power, the arm strength, all of that Sebastian Walcott has. He doesn't need anyone to teach him how to do that. But the discipline, the soft skills, the hard work, incredibly hard work, dedication, and whatever Marcus Semien has, just that hard-working attitude, that mentality, that grind set mindset that Marcus Semien has, that veteran player that has sapped every single molecule out of his natural baseball talent to be the peak of what he could possibly be, that's Marcus Semien. That is who Marcus Semien is. That is why the Rangers made him one of their cornerstone franchise building blocks, and that's why the Rangers have the renewed culture that they do. He's part of that ground floor. There is nobody who works harder than Marcus Semien in all of Major League Baseball. Everybody knows that. The habits that he has, to take care of himself, to maintain his body, to maintain his nutrition, to stay on the field, stay healthy, to get the most out of himself, that's Marcus Semien to a T. An incredible, incredible mentor to learn from, especially for someone so young, so physically gifted, to get that kind of discipline and, continuity with your routines that Marcus Semien has, and to do that at such a young age, to seek that out. Oh my goodness, it has me so excited. Almost as excited as I was when I saw Patrick Mahomes go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I've been a Pat Mahomes guy literally since college, went to Texas Tech when he was there, and I kind of see some similarities between Sebastian Walcott and Patrick Mahomes. No, I don't think that this means that Sebastian Walcott is going to be maybe the greatest ever to play the sport like Patrick Mahomes is ascended to, but I'm thinking more of the early days of Pat Mahomes in college. Now in college, I don't know if you know this about Texas Tech football, but they don't win a whole lot of football games. Trust me, this has a baseball point. Stick with me. But Pat Mahomes had all the hard skills that you could possibly have. I mean, the raw arm talent, the fantastic plays, the improvisational ability, the just instincts, the raw instincts, the things that you cannot teach. Pat Mahomes had that. But the discipline, the going through his progressions as a quarterback, the knowing his reads, staying in the pocket, doing all the things that boring good quarterbacks do. He didn't do that. And that's why I kind of thought, okay, maybe this guy will be pretty good. He's got the ceiling, the capability to be something truly special, but he needs to work on all of those, soft skills a little bit more. And he started to show a little bit of that at the end of college. But when he got drafted to Kansas City to have a future Hall of Famer, I don't think he was not a Super Bowl champion at that point, but one of the greatest coaches that we had seen in a long time in Andy Reid, Bruce Bochy. There's a comp there. And to go study under Alex Smith for a year. Alex Smith was a very good player, not anywhere near the player of Marcus Semien's caliber, but he was a very boring, no-nonsense, did all the small things right, knew how to be a consummate pro, was a very smart, detail-oriented kind of a guy, and learning under him for a year really set Patrick Mahomes up to be the kind of player that he is. And there are some similarities there of Sebastian Walcott learning for hopefully more than a year under Marcus Semien. He's not going to be benched to watch Marcus Semien at the big league level because that's how the sports are different. There's a whole minor league system there. But Sebastian Walcott sitting there and learning under Marcus Semien, saying, okay, this is how this guy goes about his business. This is how this guy takes care of his body. This is what this guy eats. This is, how he, works out. These are the kind of weights that he's putting on. I mean, this is the dedication that it takes to be the best of the best. And I want to be the best of the best. And that's one of the things that is innate about Sebastian Walcott is his desire for competition, his desire to be the best, his desire to be the greatest Bahamian baseball player ever. And as much as I love Jazz Chisholm has that title right now, and I think very much Sebastian Walcott could rip that title away from him in not that long a time. One of his other stated goals is to make the big leagues as a teenager. Now, Sebastian Walcott is still 18. He doesn't turn 19 until, 15 days from now. I don't think that's right. I think it's the 18th, actually, of March. Maybe it's the 14th. No, I think it is the 14th. So he's still got 11 days as an 18-year-old. And then he's got a whole another 365 days as a 19-year-old. But the season won't start in 2026 when he is a teenager. So if he wants to make that goal happen, he has to do it this year. He's starting this year in Double-A. He's had, 10 games, I think, if you count the postseason run for the Rough Riders, above Single-A. He crushed it, though. He was putting a little bit too much pressure on himself. He talked about this spring training when he got that aggressive assignment to Hickory last year. He was just putting too much pressure on himself, which is why his numbers were truly terrible that first couple of weeks to 3 weeks or so of the season, which I thought it was maybe he was just a little bit overmatched. But no, he was putting too much pressure on himself to crush it immediately. And then from that first slump on, he was incredible. He was absolutely incredible. He probably could have been called Double-A a little bit earlier, but the Rangers wanted to see him stick it out, to see him, continue to get better and better and better at all of those things that he needed to get better at. The progression for him has been wild. I mean, just bouncing through the system, starting the season at high A as an 18-year-old, very aggressive assignment, but making it to Double-A while still an 18-year-old, very, very aggressive. He's going to be the youngest player in Double-A this year, and he might not stay there for the entire year. I'm hoping we're going to get quite a bit of Sebastian Walcott in Frisco because I want to go see him in person, get some eyes on this kid because he's doing some special things. I mean, his numbers in spring training, not that spring training matters, numbers matter. We'll get to that point in the third segment of this show. But he's been putting on some impressive displays out there. I mean, he's hit his first home run in minor league spring training. He's only struck out once in 8 at-bats so far. He's turned 3 different should-have-been singles, actually, two different should-have-been singles into doubles. He's also had 1 regular double. He also reached on an error on a ball that he hit 115 miles an hour, the second hardest hit ball in all of baseball that was tracked in that game on Sunday. This guy's raw tools are truly insane. And pairing that with the work ethic, with the grind set mindset of a player who is less physically talented, but more mentally tough, more of the hardworking, dedication kind of a player that, has those kind of skills that everybody in baseball respects the heck out of Marcus Semien. I mean, you talk around the game, there's not many players that are more highly regarded in terms of their work ethic, their dedication to the craft, and just staying on the field, which is a skill that Marcus Semien has almost perfected. But being that young, learning from someone not old, but that, veteran and that wise and that has that kind of a skill set, I think it is going to do wonders for Sebastian Walcott. And my questions about him making the major leagues this year, they got a lot smaller. My doubts of him making the major leagues this year and achieving all of his career dreams got a whole lot smaller. Because when you got a mentor like Marcus Semien and the raw skills of Sebastian Walcott, look out, because this kid is going to be something absolutely special. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about some more that happened this weekend, including some questions about spring training stats and drawing some kind of grand conclusion about Kumar Rocker. Why that's incredibly stupid and short-sighted. We'll talk about it right after this. Now, we have a little bit of injury news to get to before we talk about Kumar Rocker's second spring start. But it's some good news, though. Don't worry. Nobody else is having Tommy John. Knock on wood. That's closer to wood. At least that I know of. At least nobody not in the Ranger system. Maybe that could have happened when I'm recording this. Anyway, Wyatt Langford is almost back. It's been a little bit over a week, 8 days specifically, since he was diagnosed with a low-grade oblique strain. He has been performing all of the baseball activities, swinging in the cages, and according to Bruce Bochy, he will be making his spring training debut sometime early this week. Now, as of right now, the starting lineup does not include him in today's Cactus League action at 2 p.m., but maybe tomorrow. I guess that's about all that qualifies for early in the week, and Wednesday would be at exactly the middle of the week. Monday is closer to early in the week, but he's not there today in the starting lineup. Maybe he'll get in there late on. Maybe he'll get in there on Tuesday, but just good to know that Wyatt Langford is coming back. It is a very minor oblique strain, so Rangers have taken care of it. He is feeling better. All of that is very, very good news. But it wasn't good news for Kumar Rocker in his game against the Milwaukee Brewers. It was even less good news for me because there was no StatCast data on this game, so it was hard to draw very many conclusions from what he did. But that didn't stop one local columnist from saying, oh, because Kumar Rocker has had 2 bad spring starts, that means that he's bad and the Rangers are never going to develop a pitcher again. And that's the heart of the column. It was a little bit more fair than that, but I just wanted to get at the point of not taking too much for any spring training starts, especially a game like this, especially a game where Rocker, did not have a good outing. He was pulled in the first inning, and then he was allowed to come back in the second inning, and he still didn't really have it in that second inning. Only 1 full inning of work. Did get a strikeout on a ball, I believe, in the dirt. Allowed 1 home run, allowed 4 hits, 4 runs, all of them earned, a couple of walks, but the 1 home run was apparently even very wind-aided. Evan Carter initially came in on the ball and then had to run back to the track and, leapt and couldn't quite get it. It looked like a routine fly ball out off of the bat, according to those who were there and who know ball, were watching the game, said, oh, that's a little unlucky with that home run. Same with Bruce Bochy, said that was a little unlucky with the home run. Arizona is just a naturally offense-heavy environment. I think that drawing any kind of grand conclusions off of Rocker is foolhardy. I mean, I talked about it after his last start. We did have StatCast data. We did see how close he was to the zone, the difference between command and control. Now, command is throwing quality strikes. Control is just throwing strikes at all. And Rocker, his misses, they weren't, pitches that were wild in the dirt in that first game. They can't really get as accurate a read on these pitches. They do have some data on game day, but it has 2 or 3 strikes that were called balls that were literally in the middle of the strike zone that they labeled as a ball. They didn't say what any pitch was. There was no data on how hard he was throwing, what types of pitches he was throwing. It was just a lot of incomplete kind of stuff outside of the actual results of the plate appearances. So I think that's just absolutely silly. Taking any kind of spring training data and saying like, oh, this is it. This is the definitive thing that proves whatever you want to prove. I mean, Cole Hamels was a horrendous spring training starter. He was always just completely lit up in spring training. Every single time out. He was pretty darn good in the regular season. That was really what mattered. Remember Shohei Ohtani when he first came over, and a lot of scouts were saying, oh, see, he's actually not good. A bunch of writers saying, see, actually, this two-way star, maybe he can't even hit. Maybe he should have just gone back to Japan. And, well, he can hit. He can also pitch. He's pretty good at baseball. And anyone making those kind of conclusions about Shohei Ohtani 2 weeks into his first spring training as a big leaguer were foolish. Absolutely foolish. Doing the same thing for Kumar Rocker a couple of starts into his spring training is just foolish. I mean, doing that for anybody, whether they're having a great spring training or a terrible spring training. You don't have to look back that far to see someone who had an incredible spring training who didn't immediately crush it right out the gates. Literally last year, Wyatt Langford, one of the best spring trainings I've ever seen. He was lighting everybody up. And it took him quite a while to get that kind of success, really until the final month of the season. He showed a little bit of it in June, but really to the final month of the season where he was doing anything close to that in an actual big league game that counted. Because these games don't count. Remember? That's the whole point of them, is that they don't count. It's so that you are ready for the games that do matter, that do count in the wins and losses record. The Cactus League trophy is an armadillo or something. I don't even know what it is because it's stupid. It's silly. It's ridiculous. It does not matter. Just like these stats. But the processes behind them, it's like watching minor league baseball, watching spring training. You should watch them very similarly. The actual numbers, except in spring training, put a little bit less weight on what the actual numbers are. In minor league baseball, you can put some weight on the numbers. But what's more important is the processes. What is going into this game? If a guy throws a pitch on a corner and somebody just bloops it into the outfield for a double, if someone is just, dotting up a four-seam fastball, up and in, and it just gets just enough in on the hands that it'll break the bat and the runner's fast and he beats it out, that doesn't mean that was a bad pitch. Oh, he gave up a hit. That must be a bad pitch. No, that's not the case. Look more at the processes, the overall what's going into what this pitcher is doing, and also look at some of those factors Like, maybe they're just working on one pitch specifically. Maybe they're only trying to throw primarily changeups, and hitters know that's coming, so they can sit on a changeup and crush it. They wouldn't do that in a game that counts. So, I would say take all of these spring training stats with several grains of salt, including one that went very, very well on Friday before Jack Leiter got into that game against the Cubs. One thing that I do want to take away from that game is Cody Bradford looking very, very good this spring. Not just that, he went 3 innings of shutout ball against the Cubs, allowed 1 walk, 3 hits, 3 strikeouts, but we saw an uptick in velocity. We've seen it a couple of times this spring. Now, Cody Bradford it's not the same level of jump in spring training velocity that another left-hander had a couple years back in Cole Reagans. He was throwing a little bit softer than Cole Reagan was before, and he's not throwing nearly as hard as Cole Reagans was after. Reagans headed into that camp, averaging 92, 93 maybe with the fastball, and then jumped into camp averaging like 95, 96, touching near 100, which he had never come anywhere close to before. Bradford, though, averaged last year with his fastball velocity was 89.8 miles an hour, so below 90. And in this game, he was averaging 91.3, up 1.5 miles an hour. Everything in that velocity was, in that arsenal was up around 1.5 miles an hour. And Bradford is a big, tall lefty who just drops that baseball in there on you. He's so tall, he extends so much that he can basically drop the ball in the catcher's mitt. And that's why he can survive at 88, 89, 90. But you start ticking that up to 90, 91, 92. Just those extra couple ticks really help him be that much more effective. The changeup is also a very good pitch, so it makes that also more effective. The curveball, he still needs to get a little bit better with that, a little bit more consistent with it. I would like to see it be at least a major league average pitch. Same with that slider. I know he just uses it against lefties, but I would really like to see that get just a little bit better. But the fastball, changeup, and okay curveball combination got him to do a lot of great stuff last year. And I think that if that fastball starts ticking up just that bit more, even if the curveball and slider don't progress, that is a pitcher who can maintain that kind of level of success that he had last year, which was a whole lot of success for a homegrown Rangers starting pitcher. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.